For those of you that don't know me, my name is Tim Tomes, and this is Next Generation Web Reconnaissance. Quick introduction. Like I said, Tim Tomes, also known as LanMaSteR53. That's my Twitter handle. Try to get away from it. Once you start something like that, it's a tough trend to break. I'm a SANS community instructor. I teach web penetration testing, Security 542. Don't have any of those skills right now, but if you're interested, keep in touch with me after the talk, and I'll let you know next time I'm teaching it. Do security blogging for paul.com. I've linked to it over from my blog at LanMaSteR53.com, so if you want just my stuff, you can RSS LanMaSteR53.com. You can find all of paul.com stuff, which is great because Mark blogs there too. He's in the audience. Then RSS that one. I'm a veteran. Spent 9 years in the United States Army. I'm a Christian, and I love Python, and I mean exclusively the scripting language when I say Python. All right, some quick credits to get started. First of all, I want to throw a shout out to John Strand. He's the one that came up with the initial idea for a tool called Pushpin that we're going to be releasing today. Ethan Robish, he wrote that initial version of this, version 1. It was really kind of like, hey, you got a couple free hours. I got an idea. Let's throw something together. So he threw together a quick script called Pushpin, which some of you may have seen before. I know John Strand has talked about it in the past. And then Rob Dixon, who's also known as 304 Geek. Some of you may be familiar with him. One of the founders of HackerCon out in Charleston, West Virginia. He did a ton of testing for me and also recommended a bunch of features that I've built into the tool now, which has really made it become what it is. So a quick agenda for today. We're going to cover a little bit about what is our definition of recon, why reconnaissance is important, what's the problem with reconnaissance as it currently stands. We'll talk about a tool called ReconNG, which solves some of those problems, take a new look on reconnaissance, and then release another tool, or at least talk about another tool. So reconnaissance, important part of our methodology, whether we're doing network penetration testing or we're doing web application penetration testing, reconnaissance is built into that, right? Information gathering on the network side, reconnaissance by name on the web app side. And what's the definition of that? Well, Merriam-Webster says it's a preliminary survey to gain information. But I would change that definition to something along the lines of this for what we're doing in penetration testing. We're using open sources to gain information about a target without making direct contact. And I think without making direct contact is a key statement there. And the reason it's a key statement is we look at the first purpose of reconnaissance from my point of view, right? First purpose, validating scope. Okay, so let me give you an example. You've been given a scope by, say, you've got a point of contact within an organization, and they've come to you and said, hey, these are the domains that you're going to be penetration testing, or this is your IP list. You're taking for granted that that information is accurate, right? He may have gone to somebody and asked for that information as well, and he's taken that information for granted. I've run into cases where I've been given scope from a person, a point of contact, and they've either given me information that wasn't in the scope, right? So I've got somebody else's IP space that they've given me to attack, or they've given me not enough. They haven't given me all the websites that they actually own. Not because they're doing it on purpose, some cases they might be, but because it's just an inaccurate scope, or they've talked to somebody that doesn't have the full knowledge. So what we want to do as penetration testers, we want to validate that scope. We want to go out, we want to use reconnaissance techniques to find out, is this information they're giving me accurate? And if not, I need to go back and adjust that, right? So that's what we're talking about with scope validation. Gathering information for social engineering. Phone numbers for cold calls, email addresses for phishing, things of that sort is what we're talking about there. Finding vulnerable code or technologies. So I know personally on pen test, I've gone out to stuff like Google groups, other news groups, things like that. You do a search for a particular domain, you might find a developer from that company that was out there developing a piece of code, had a problem. Who in here writes code? Just show of hands. How often have you gone online and said, I've got a problem with this piece of code, can somebody help me out? Yeah, a ton of us, right? We all do that. Well, not all of us think about the security implications of that. You may actually find vulnerable code out there. I've found SQL injection vulnerabilities and cross-site scripting vulnerabilities in code that was posted on Google Groups that was in the production environment of a target website that I was attacking. That stuff happens. That's what we're looking for there. We're also looking for maybe hints of vulnerable technologies. So companies put out requests, right? We're looking for people, we want to hire people with this particular skill set. Well, if you want to hire somebody with that skill set, it tells me two things. One, that you've got that technology implemented in your environment, and two, that you're lacking in that place right now because you're looking for somebody to do the job. So things that we're looking for in that area. And then we want to identify weaknesses in physical security, and we'll talk more about that in depth here in just a minute. So what's the problem? Well, recon is often overlooked or just skipped completely, right? And there's a couple reasons for that. One, when people think of reconnaissance, they think physical. If physical is not in scope for the pen test or the Tiger Team or Red Team assessment, whatever you want to call it, then we may just say, I don't need to do reconnaissance because it's physical, don't need to do it. Right? We know that that's incorrect. Internal teams. One thing I hear a lot from internal teams is we already know everything about our company because we work here, dude. All right? And then a lot of external folks, what's one of our biggest constraints as a penetration tester? Time, right? We're constricted to time, which means we have to cut something. In some cases, we may need to cut something from the schedule. What do we look at? We may see reconnaissance as being the least important piece of the methodology. We might drop it off and move on. But here's my argument to all of those, right? So an internal team, you never know everything. Every single pen test that I've gone on and I've done a serious level of reconnaissance on, I've showed them something they didn't know existed. And in most cases, it was an external facing box in their DMZ that they had no idea was there with that service open. Was it always vulnerable? No, but that's something that they need to know. For an external team, you end up going back and doing a lot of this stuff anyway, right? So you get into a pen test, you come across a forms authentication page and a web page. Maybe it's got a username harvesting vulnerability in it. You need to start somewhere to harvest those usernames. Well, you're going to go back do some of this work to get some usernames to test against the vulnerability. So you might as well go ahead and do it and have it done with. And also, if phishing or some sort of social engineering is involved in the penetration test. And then for all parties involved, it's just good to know what the rest of the world knows about you, right? As an internal team, that's absolutely necessary. You have to know what everyone else knows about you. And as an external or third-party tester, it's our duty to take that information to our customers, right? They're paying us for that type of information. We have to know what the world knows about our target, or else we essentially don't know anything. So what's my solution to this? Well, let's not skip it, let's automate it. And in some cases, let's automate it better than it's being automated now. Okay, so as we move through the talk, I'm going to address these different purposes of reconnaissance, and then we'll specifically talk about a tool or a solution to solve that particular problem. So the first one is validating scope. And by validating scope, the first thing we want to do is we want to be able to enumerate hosts. Not enumerate hosts in the sense of let's scan the remote network and find out what's there, but we're going to use open sources. Remember, we're not making direct contact. There's a couple ways we can do that. DNS. Now DNS is a little bit iffy here because in essence we do sometimes make direct contact. If our requests make it to the authoritative name server on the domain, we're actually touching that domain. So be careful with that. But there's stuff like whois, etc., the typical little reliables that we all normally do. Another cool one I think is pretty interesting is AdSense and Analytics IDs from Google. So a lot of developers, if they're using these types of technologies, that their Google ID or Analytics or AdSense ID is built into the page. You can then take that ID, do a reverse lookup on it through places like ewhiz.com and some other online websites, and it'll show you all of the other web pages on the internet that use that same ID. So what does that tell us? That the developer of that page is also developing these other pages. If it's an internal developer, we may find some other websites that we weren't initially aware of. And my favorite one is using the advanced search operators in Google. So Google, who here uses the advanced search operators in Google? Anybody ever played with the cite operator, right? Use it quite often. All right, so we know that if you do site:/domain.com, it's going to restrict all of your results to only things that come from that one domain, correct? Well, what if I do something like this? We're familiar with the minus sign modifier, which says I don't want to see anything from there. But what if we say site:/domain.com minus site www.domain.com? So we first make this particular search, and it comes back, and I see www.domain.com, I see dev.domain.com, or admin.domain.com. And I just do a minus for each one of those. I search again, and I see a whole new set. And I keep doing that. I keep creating these, pulling these subdomains out until I get no results back from Google. Essentially what I have is I have a listing of every single host, subdomain or host, that Google is aware of for that particular domain. So that was the idea behind the tool GXFR, which I released last year. Okay, so it's kind of old news. This isn't really the next gen stuff. What's up?
In the site operator, the asterisk will also work as a wildcard. So you could do something like pki.asterisk.mil, and you would get all the websites that use that host name in the .mil subdomain.
Right, true. Okay, we're looking for that specific. Are you talking about on the left side of this?
Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this will actually find all of those as well. It'll just find them individually rather than trying to fit them all in one search. So GXFR was the tool that I came out with last year, and it enumerates hosts via Google, right? You can get it right here, but don't write that down yet because I've got some other stuff for you. All right, so So wait, what do we got? We can do more. Turns out Bing, Yahoo, they all have this same functionality, and they all provide different results. Now there's some overlap there, but I've found that Yahoo and Bing also come up with some things that Google doesn't find. Google finds things that they don't find. So I've incorporated them all into Jixper. I extended Jixper to incorporate that stuff. And then I came across, well, I didn't come across Showdown. We all know about Showdown, right? Show of hands, if people know about Showdown, pretty awesome tool, right? Well, they have a search engine for hosts on the internet, period, not just websites, but anything. They have a host name operator, which kind of lets us do the same thing. It lets us say, I want to see everything within domain.com. Well, you pull those results back, you scrape the subdomains out, and what do you have? You have a list of hosts for that particular domain yet again. And it typically comes back with stuff that's almost 100% different than the other versions. So it's a great way to go and start pulling down all of these hosts that the internet knows about that our target or us don't particularly know about. All right? So I got to thinking, I'm doing a whole lot of work with this. Should I start to build a framework? No, not yet, because I'm still just doing host enumeration. So let's look at the next purpose for Recon, and that's gathering information for social engineering. All right? So where are the people at? Where are the people on the internet? Here's the popular one, right? LinkedIn. Right. How many people here have a LinkedIn account? Most of us. All right. And what makes LinkedIn really important to penetration testers over something like Facebook or MySpace? It's professional social networking, right? And because people tie that to themselves as a professional, they typically put accurate data there. And I'm not talking about accurate data as far as like my experience, because people lie on their resumes, right? But I'm talking accurate data as far as their name. They're not going to use like a fake name or a nickname, or they're going to use their real name. They're going to have real information about where they work, right? Because otherwise they can get definitely called out about that. And that's the type of information that we're looking for. That's what makes LinkedIn a hotbed for this type of stuff. You hear us about Jigsaw. Okay, good. Not a big show of hands. You're going to like this. I love Jigsaw. So Jigsaw is a cloud-based customer relationship management software. Enables company to push that CRM stuff to the cloud rather than handle it all internal. It's owned by Salesforce. It was bought by them, I think, in 2010 for about $150 million. I think it was bought for. But what makes Jigsaw so awesome? The first thing is it's crowdsourced. Okay. So when you go to jigsaw.com and you start looking around at how it gathers contacts or how the software works, you'll see that there's like leaderboards for people that have added the most contacts to Jigsaw. There's contest boards where you can actually win cash prizes for contributing the most in a particular month, or the second or the third most, right? So there's cash prizes for submitting contacts. And then as an added benefit, for every contact you add, you get one. So while it's a pay-for service, most other people, if you're not using it for a CRM, if you're a salesperson, you can go purchase a license with Jigsaw and then get contacts from them, email addresses, phone numbers, everything, right? So they're getting it from both ends. As the community, we're contributing. They're turning around, selling it. All they have to do is house the data and make it searchable for us, right? So that's the first thing. The fact that it's cloud-sourced makes it powerful, and it updates faster than any other CRM on the cloud. The other thing is it's free, right? So I said you got to pay for it, but not the information we're looking for. What are we interested in? First names, last names, and job titles. We can pretty much mutate that information to make whatever we need for social engineering out of that. Now we don't have phone numbers in there. That's okay. Phone numbers are fairly easy to get though, right? I mean, phone numbers are much easier to get than email addresses in terms of specific people within the company. So we've got job titles, we have first names, last names. We can use that first name and last name, mangle them around, and create email addresses out of it. All right. So I wrote some scripts to do that. So like I said, there's a lot of tools out there that currently do the LinkedIn thing. However, a lot of them are doing it wrong. So I've dissected quite a few of them. And what they're doing is they'll go out and they'll do a Google site search for LinkedIn.com, and then in quotations they'll put the name of the company. And they take for granted that all the results that come back are legitimate results of people that work for that company. But that's not true. How many times does they say if I'm searching for Acumen, right? How many times does Acumen show up in somebody else's page that doesn't work there? It could be they follow Acumen, or they're a fan of Acumen, or they used to be employed at Acumen, or a number of other areas. I found that like 1 in 50 to 100 are actual hits when you search a domain. So what my script does is it pulls down those results from Google, and then it individually goes to LinkedIn.com for every single one and validates that that person actually works at the organization. So it weeds out a lot of those false positives. And then I wrote a script that does the Jigsaw thing. It just goes and scrapes all this data, and it gives you all the usernames that Jigsaw knows about a particular company. So what's it? And I call the script recon-ng. Right? That's the, kind of the reason for the name of the talk. So what does it look like when you run it? You've got a couple different modes. You've got host enumeration mode. You've got contact enumeration mode. This has been fixed on the latest version, I promise you. All right. When you're in that particular mode, you can run the different modules for the mode. You don't have to run them all. You can, but you can run individual modules. Same here. And the cool thing about this mutate argument for contacts is I've got mutations built into it, standard, or you can create your own. So using pattern options like first initial, first name, last initial, last name, you can build your own string and it'll output the email address for you, right? So it'll have it there. Now the output for the tool is very easily parsable, but it also has the ability to output to a CSV file, right? Which we all love CSV files. You pull them into Excel, you can parse them in batch, you can do a lot of really neat stuff with it. So it's really user-friendly in terms of what you can do with the output. So what's it look like when you run it? Jigs for, hey, here's a bunch of host names, all the way down. This I just added into it last night. It actually will do, if you, back here looking at the help, there's a new -- resolve right here. If you use the -- resolve argument, it'll go and it'll do a lookup for every single domain that it finds. So now you have the IP address and you have the domain. And all that will be in the CSV file when you output it, right? Good information to have, right? I would say so. This is what the contact script looks like. This is for Secure Ideas, Kevin Johnson's company. First, it has to go. Jigsaw requires a company ID to look up contacts. So the first thing it's going to do is dump out a list of companies for your search. You select the company ID. In this case, it was a unique match. And then it goes, it pulls all the contacts from there, goes into LinkedIn, does all the LinkedIn stuff, and then shout out the mutation that I gave it based on this right here. All right. So a really easy way to enumerate a ton of contacts. Right. And that's Recon-ng. All right, so the next purpose of Recon I want to talk about is identifying weaknesses in physical security. Okay, and this is where I'm going to challenge. The current methodology. So as I said, I was in the Army for 9 years. I spent 3 to 4 years as an Army red teamer, where we did full spectrum red team assessments. Right, so we weren't doing just network penetration tests. We were looking at everything, wireless, physical, and all of that. So physical reconnaissance was an important part of our mission and what we did. Here's an actual definition of reconnaissance from the Army Field Manual 7-92. Reconnaissance is a mission to obtain information by visual observation or other detection methods, blah, 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 blah. Okay? Other detection methods is what I'm going to challenge here. In my version of other detection methods would be any type of media out there that someone else has already created for us, right? So we've got stuff like pictures from Flickr and Picasa, videos, social media from Twitter. All that stuff is already out there. People are doing this all over the globe. They're putting it out there on the internet for us to view, right? Why can't we use that information to conduct physical reconnaissance without ever actually stepping foot on the ground, okay? Well, we can do that through geotagging. For those of you that don't know what geotagging is when your device that you're creating that media on has the ability to locate itself, whether it's through Wi-Fi triangulation or GPS or whatever. It attaches that location information to that particular media's metadata, and then when you upload it to one of these sites or whatever, it strips that information out and makes their content searchable according to that geotag information. So I can go to any one of these sites or any one of these APIs and say, hey, I want to see all the pictures within this radius of this particular grid coordinate. And Picasa is going to show me all of those, or it's going to send them back to me so that I can use them in some way. And so that's what we're going to do here, okay? And that's what I've done with Pushpin version 2. Like I said earlier, there was earlier version 1. So it's a Python module, so all the different pieces within it you can actually use independently through the interpreter. You don't have to actually run the script as is. However, I've written a wrapper script. It's built all into a wrapper script. It's got a main function in there, so you can run it independently, right? And inside the script, each media source, Twitter, Picasa, Flickr, whatever, is a method. And it's very easy to extend because I've built in a schema for API synchronization. What that means is every single one of these APIs respond with information differently. None of them look the same when you get it back. But I've built a schema for it that if you're dealing with an API and you can get each one of these pieces of information from it, then you can create a new module for this tool in like 10 minutes. It's super simple. So it's very, very extensible. And the output is all self-contained. It's HTML files, all local, and it builds 2 pages for you, a media page and a maps page. And what do these look like? All right, so the media page, actually, this is what it looks like when you run the help on it. You give it a center, the coordinates for the center, a radius. You can say this actually will serialize all of the data you get from these different APIs and store it locally so that you can use it later. That's helpful. You can specify modules or specify them all, and you can also filter for time if you only want a certain time frame in there. So you run the script, and it says, I'm getting data here, 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 and boom, it pops up in your browser and it shows you this. Okay? This is the media page, which gives you a column for each of the different APIs that you pull data from. And in each one of these columns, you'll see information about that particular piece of media. Here's a tweet, right? You click on this, it takes you to the tweet. You click on the person's profile, it takes you to their profile. And then you actually have the content, or for a picture you have a description or whatever. That's all part of that schema I was talking about. As you scroll over these pieces of media, a little map pops up. And it gives you a push pin right on the map that says, hey, this tweet came from Peter. Right? And it's really dynamic as you scroll throughout the page. That stuff pops up and you can interact with it. Pretty cool, right? We can see a lot of stuff, but it's kind of hard to put it all together, right? You can't really see, you want to see clusters and trends and things of that sort. And that's what this is for, okay? So the other map tab takes all of these pieces of media and it throws it up on a map for you and color codes it, right? So I've got tweets, or the purples are Picassos, and the oranges are Flickrs, and the reds are YouTubes. And you can go in and click on each of these push pins, and the piece of media will show up and show you that same information that you had on the other media tab. Okay, so now we can begin to see trending data and things of that sort. 10 minutes? Yeah, cool, thanks. All right. Anybody recognize this location? I know we've got, who here has an iPhone? I got 2 hands, liars. I know I got more iPhones out there.
Apple's campus.
Yeah, that's Infinite Loop. Okay, this is Infinite Loop, Apple's campus. And I'm sure, well, maybe, we've heard about the secrecy of Apple's campus. You can't get into the buildings, you know. Physical reconnaissance should be really, really hard in that location. We should not be able to find anything out about Building 1 at Infinite Loop because of their vaunted security program or whatever you want to call it. But realistically, can we? Right? So we're going to target Apple headquarters, Cupertino, California, and we're going to run through using pushpin against them and see what we can find. So for all those out there that have done physical penetration tests or full scope, red teaming, tiger teaming, whatever you want to call it, what are some of the points of interest that we want to get out of or observe through physical reconnaissance? Come on.
Trash bins.
Okay, trash bins.
Smokers and
I'm looking for a more broad.
The worst devices.
Okay.
Loading docks.
All right.
Badges.
Badges. So I would say, in a generic sense, entry control points. Right? So entry control points can be a lot of things. Habits of security forces. We want to see some of the habits of security forces, and then definitely badging. Any type of badging system, we want to be able to identify some information about it. Right? So entry control points for Building 1. How's that? All right. What kind of information can we get out of this? Well, we can see that possibly it looks like there's some cameras at the entry control points. There's definitely something going on over here. It looks like it might be an RFID reader, maybe a telephone, so we can call into the receptionist. Possibly an opportunity for social engineering there, right? So we get a view of what the entry control point looks like, and we're not there. We have never set foot on the ground. Right? But that's the outside. What's the inside look like? Holy cow, that's what the inside looks like. So now we can see what the inside of the entry control points look like. It's kind of dark here. You can see a lot more on the actual picture. You can kind of see what the inside of the entry control point looks like. No receptionist there. There's some receptionists here and here. What's this guy right there? Looks like it could be an armed guard wearing a vest, right? Maybe, maybe not. All right. But we are starting to get a view of what the inside of the entry control points look like. All important information. This kind of stuck out to me. When you look at this, now this isn't entry control point oriented, but when you look at this, what kind of sticks out to you?
Unlock computer.
Possibly to the untrained eye, right? So you've got these. These are definitely going to be connected to active ports, but the chances are these are in a restricted VLAN, right? If these are guest systems, chances are these are going to be. What about these right here? Chances are these are IPTVs. Every assessment I've ever been on where I've been dealing with IPTVs, I plug into that, I go straight to the corporate network. Now, typically it's like a streaming VLAN where they're doing streaming media because they're pushing it out to TVs all over the campus. But there's usually less restrictions between that media VLAN and the actual corporate network as there are from here, because they look at this and like, people are going to be sitting down there, we can't have them touching our corporate network. But over there, oh, nobody will plug into the TV jack. It's safe, right? Stuff to look for, stuff that I've gotten that you get, and these are all pictures from that pushpin diagram, right? Just some simple analysis of the pushpin diagram. So what about security forces? Interesting video about the Greenpeace activist causing some ruckus out in front of the building, right? After about, what does it say, like, I don't know, a couple minutes into it, the guards finally show up, and they're kind of big, a little overweight. They're definitely not going to catch you in a road race, right? So they kind of mill around, and stare at the thing for a few minutes, and then I really wish you could see this. They're standing over here like this, while this fat dude in a white shirt is jerking the door open. It's like, what? What do these guys do? So you kind of start to see their level. Got it. You start to see their level of interaction, right? And then their habit. So here's an interesting video that came off of there. These guys traveled to Cupertino, California, camped out on the lawn of Building 1. No one said anything to them till the next morning when they woke up. The guy walked up to them outside the tent and said, "What are you doing?" They're like, "We're here to see Building 1." The guy was like, "Okay," and walked away. And they got a video talking about it. And then there's this article that talks about a guy that was working on a project for Apple. They canceled the project, disabled his badge, sent him on his way, and he continued to use that badge to tailgate into the building for 3 months and use Apple's equipment to continue to work on his project. So what does that tell you about, I mean, all this stuff is coming from the information I got from Pushpin. Right? So pretty neat stuff. And the last thing, badging.
Wow.
Need I say more? All right? Dude, I work for Apple. Check out my badge. Fantastic. We got what we need. All right? We got a good start. All this without ever setting foot on the ground. All right? I think Chris Nickerson would be pretty happy about this. He's not in here, is he? All right. He needs to see the talk. Because I think he would like this. It'd save him some time and some money. All right, so the goods. One detail about the goods is all standard libs. I hate having to install third-party Python libraries to make my stuff work. How many people here hate doing that as well? All right, that's what I thought. Can't stand it, right? So it's all standard libraries. When you pull the script down, it's just going to work. And if it doesn't, make sure you let me know because I'll fix it. Reconnaissance, I'm going to release it via tweet later on today. I'll link to it. So here's my Twitter handle right here. Follow me. I'll tweet it later on this afternoon. Pushpin is private release to you guys only. So what that means is one of three things. Number one, come up, leave me a business card. Number two, come up, write your email address on a piece of paper. Or three, email me and say, "Hey dude, I was at your talk, Pushpin rocks, I want you to send me a copy of it." And I'll shoot you a copy of it, okay? Here's my contact info. That's all I got. Before you leave, I'd like to take one more picture of this because standing room only in the stable section is pretty darn cool, if you don't mind. I'll send this to Dave and be like, "How about next year you give me a real..." All right, there we go. But in any case, all joking aside, I love DerbyCon. They're fantastic. That's my contact info. Follow me. Keep in touch. I'm always putting out stuff that I think is pretty cool. I think you'll like it too. Thank you for being here. Any questions? Any questions? Anything? What's up?
Have you done 9800 Savage Road?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
Let me write that down. What's up?
Did you mention Facebook's graph API as far as being able to utilize that in your social media stuff?
I didn't do a whole lot with Facebook. They're not as friendly with the geotagging information. The geotagged information. So for my purposes here, when I'm trying to geolocate it in one area, it wasn't as user friendly for me. But I do plan on digging into a lot of other APIs.
Foursquare is useful.
Yep, Foursquare as well. Yeah, that'll work. Thank you. Any other questions?
How's it going?
Enjoy the conference, folks.
Sleep good this morning?
Thank you.